Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to just picture the scene with me for a second. It's September 13th, 1969. It's a gorgeous, crisp fall day in Toronto, and there are 22,000 screaming fans packed into Varsity Stadium. They are totally hyped, about to witness a massive one-day festival featuring, honestly, an absolutely legendary lineup of rock and roll pioneers. But what those cheering fans have absolutely no idea about is that just days earlier, this exact same festival was teetering right on the edge of becoming a complete and total disaster. So today, we're going to look at how this near catastrophe actually transformed into an unforgettable, monumental piece of music history. And we'll do that by focusing on three defining moments from that incredible day. Okay, let's dive into this, because as documentary director Ron Chapman puts it, this wasn't just some fun weekend concert. This was a seismic event. And honestly, it begs this really incredible question. How on earth did a failing, completely struggling Canadian rock festival end up becoming the actual catalyst that broke up the biggest band in the entire world, the Beatles? Well, to understand that, we have to look at the massive, wild gamble that started this whole shebang. So the mastermind behind this whole event was a young, pretty scrappy Toronto concert promoter named John Brower. Now, Brower and his partner Ken Walker, they had a vision. Their big idea was to bring together the absolute pioneers of 1950s rock and roll for this one-day revival show. But there was a massive catch here. By 1969, kids wanted mind-bending psychedelic rock. They absolutely did not want the music of their parent generation. The 1950s legends they were booking had really fallen out of contemporary favor. Mostly, they were just playing lounges on the Las Vegas Strip at that point. So Brower was literally betting entirely against the cultural current. And man, that bet was failing miserably. With just 1 week to go before the festival, they had sold a dismal 2,000 tickets. I mean, put that into perspective. Varsity Stadium is a 20,000-seat football venue, so they were facing an absolutely empty house, just a ghost town. Unsurprisingly, their investors were incredibly nervous, actively talking about pulling out entirely. The festival was basically on life support. They were staring down the barrel of a $70,000 failure, which was huge money back then. Enter Kim Fowley. He was the festival's MC, kind of a notoriously outrageous record producer. And Fowley launches into this massive, frantic hotel room tirade, just screaming that if this festival was in LA, it would be sold out. And amidst all this rising panic, he throws out this wild, total Hail Mary idea to save the 70 grand. He just says, call John Lennon. Now, this seemed totally insane, right? Lennon was busy in the studio recording Abbey Road, and he literally hadn't played a live show since 1966. But hey, with absolutely nothing to lose, Brower picked up the phone. And that wild phone call brings us right to moment one, Lennon's solo debut and the end of the Beatles. So Brewer actually offers Lennon a handsome fee. And, to everyone's absolute shock, Lennon was interested. But he had one major condition before he'd even consider stepping onto a stage. And this brilliantly illustrates just how chaotic this all was. Lennon said he'd only do it if Eric Clapton played guitar. So the mad scramble begins. Clapton was in a studio in England, but somehow he says yes. Then they quickly grab bassist Klaus Voormann and drummer Alan White to complete this temporary, well, actually, scratch that. It was a totally artificial backup group that they jokingly called the Plastic Ono Band. And even with the band assembled, Lennon actually panicked and tried to back out at the very last minute. But they finally got him and Yoko Ono on a plane. When they landed in Toronto, they were famously escorted to the stadium by the Vagabonds Motorcycle Club, a local biker gang who, get this, had actually helped finance the festival. And the absolute second word got out that John Lennon was actually physically in Toronto, every single remaining ticket sold out in one day. Boom, gone. So picture this. John Lennon walks out onto the Varsity Stadium stage in that iconic white suit of his. He is incredibly nervous, obviously, but the band just tears into this blistering set. The sheer rawness of this performance was unbelievable. They actually debuted a brand new song called Cold Turkey, and it was so new, in fact, that Lennon couldn't even remember the words. He literally had to read the lyrics right off a piece of paper that Yoko Ono was holding up next to his guitar while he played. It's just wild to think about. But the magic really didn't stop there. When Lennon and Ono transitioned into performing Give Peace a Chance, the crowd just started swaying in front of this magical field of twinkling lights. Yeah, it is widely believed that the iconic tradition of waving lit lighters and matches in the air at rock concerts, that was born right then and there, illuminating Varsity Stadium. Now, the historical weight of this single set just cannot be overstated. Lennon was so electrified by this performance that a massive realization hit him. He just didn't need the Beatles anymore. As he noted later on, he literally announced to the musicians around him right there in Toronto that he was leaving his band. Just a few days after returning to London, he officially told the other Beatles he was quitting. The most famous band in history was effectively broken up because of a last-minute gig in Canada. Crazy, right? Okay, let's see how this builds into moment 2, the Alice Cooper chicken incident. Because, while John Lennon was quietly altering the entire course of pop music history backstage, out on the main stage, things were taking a highly bizarre, unplanned, and totally chaotic turn with a rising shock rock band. Oh yeah, I am talking about the infamous Alice Cooper chicken incident. Right in the middle of the festival bill, Cooper was performing when, somehow, a live chicken just wanders on the stage. Cooper, genuinely thinking that chickens could actually fly, tossed it out into the crowd, expecting it to just soar away gracefully. Instead, it plummeted, and the unruly crowd completely tore it apart. The story absolutely exploded into international headlines, reading Alice Cooper kills chicken on stage. Cooper always claimed it was a total accident, but the legend stuck forever. It instantly cemented the band's reputation as the most outrageous act in rock. Moving past the flying chickens and the secret Beatles drama, we arrive at moment 3, the 1950s Legends Marathon. It is so crucial to remember that John Brower's original vision was a 1950s rock revival. And beneath all the crazy headlines, this festival delivered an absolute 12-hour masterclass in music history. It was a manic, marathon display of pure rock and roll energy. I mean, you had the father of rock, Chuck Berry, doing his legendary duck walk right across the stage. You had Little Richard just pounding the piano with unmatched manic energy. Jerry Lee Lewis kicking his piano stool over. Bo Diddley with his signature rectangular guitar. Rockabilly legend Gene Vincent performing through health struggles. And they were joined by acts like Chicago, bringing their massive horn-driven rock, and Tony Joe White. I mean, this lineup was absolutely stacked. And capping off that entire incredible lineup were the actual headliners of the festival, The Doors. Led by the enigmatic Jim Morrison, the band was coming off a highly tumultuous period, to say the least. Just 6 months earlier, Morrison had been arrested in Miami for indecent exposure. The band was in a very, very precarious place. So this festival wasn't just another gig for them. It was an absolutely crucial comeback performance. They needed the energy of this show just as much as the desperate promoters had needed their star power to legitimize the bill in the first place. So what is the aftermath of this frantic collision of rock history? Let's look at The Legacy Revivals '69. Fortunately for all of us, these chaotic backstage scenes and electric performances were captured on raw 16mm film by legendary filmmaker D.A. Pennebaker, which was recently highlighted in Ron Chapman's fantastic 2022 documentary Revival '69. But you might be wondering, why did it take so long for people to really remember this? Well, if you contrast it with Woodstock, you see the problem right away. Woodstock happened just before this festival and completely consumed all the cultural oxygen. As Ron Chapman explained, Toronto was kind of passed over by time and history for 2 main reasons. Everyone was completely festival fatigued after Woodstock, and historically, massive cultural events in Canada were just often overlooked by the global media. But as this explainer clearly shows, its legacy is absolutely undeniable. John Brower's massive gamble fundamentally altered rock history in a few really key ways. First off, Lennon's performance became Live Peace in Toronto 1969, which was the very first live album released by a Beatle. Second, it was the direct catalyst for Lennon leaving the Beatles, ensuring they would never perform live again. And third, it proved, without a doubt, that Canada could host world-class music events. This really paved the way for the modern Canadian music industry as we know it, from the Juno Awards all the way to the Montreal Jazz Festival. So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. What started as an empty stadium and a frantic, desperate hotel room tirade became what many now call the second most important event in rock history. It leaves us with this really fascinating thought about how massive historical shifts, like the end of the Beatles, can happen totally by accident, just entirely against all odds, driven by a promoter's sheer desperation and a biker gang escort. Did you know Canada hosted an event with this much historical weight? Take a moment to just think about how different music history might be today if that stadium had just stayed empty. Thanks so much for exploring this amazing piece of history with me.